Almost every single day, somebody asks me, where should I invest? And they typically are referring to a type of account, such as Roth IRA or 401k or even an HSA or brokerage account. And what I'm here to tell you today is we have to start higher level than that. So obviously we want to get to the accounts, and then obviously within those accounts, we want to invest like index funds and ETFs, but where exactly are we supposed to invest? So the question today is which broker to select and what things you need to consider when selecting a broker. So first things first, what's a broker? A broker is simply where you hold your assets or your individual securities within your specific accounts. So we have to understand the key fundamentals into investing and which level we're actually at. And after this video, if you want to walk a level deeper, just click the video in the right-hand corner to walk into the actual accounts that you're going to be invested in within these brokers. I also have another video that's portfolio allocation of the actual investments within the accounts. So not to get confusing, but now let's break down the 4 key pieces of the investing equation before we hit the top layer. So the top layer, which we'll be talking about today, is the broker. The second layer is accounts. The third layer is investment product. And the fourth layer is the actual understanding of what that investment product is made up of, which is typically a piece of a company or a piece of many companies within an index fund, ETF, or mutual fund of some sort. So today the question is which broker? So the 3 main brokers we're going to discuss today is Vanguard, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab. Now, of course, there's other ones out there, and I'm not saying that those other ones are bad, but these 3 are the Goliaths of the investing world, and you can't go wrong with any of these 3. So the top 3 factors I look at when I'm assessing an actual brokerage are these 3 things. 1, investment fees. 2, investment products. And 3, customer service. And all 3 big brokers have low fees, phenomenal investment products, as well as great customer service. And they're the most well-respected in the industry for a reason. And these 3 brokers understand what it takes to be actually successful in investing. This is not the Robin Hoods of the world where you're trying to get rich overnight. These are the actual wealth builders that you want to be in if you want to take your investing game to the next level. So you can continue to use your Robin Hoods, your Webull, your SoFis, but if you want to invest in the big leagues, you want to watch this video. So when it comes to fees, all 3 brokers have phenomenal fees and very low fees at that, if any. And so Fidelity definitely wins in this category by such a small margin. And the thing is, it's so small, it really doesn't matter. And while fees play a huge role and a small amount of fees can add up, let's talk about the actual differences within these different brokers. So Vanguard does charge an account fee on an annual basis. However, you can get that removed if you sign up for e-delivery. So it's really not that big of a deal. And it's only about 20 bucks. And it also depends on which type of account you open. Whereas Fidelity and Charles Schwab do not have those types of fees, which is phenomenal. But again, you're splitting hairs here. So as we talked about earlier, there's different layers to investing. There's broker, there's investment accounts, and there's investments. And then obviously within that investment is a fundamental understanding of what that investment actually entails. We were just talking about fees at the broker level, and that's what we're selecting today. So as far as that goes, it's almost 0. On top of that, they each have their specific fund baskets, and each one of those have specific fees associated with what's called an expense ratio. Now, Fidelity wins the title here as well, just slightly, with 0 fee funds, literally $0, which is phenomenal. But again, it does come with a little bit of downside. Let's take VTSAX, for example. At Fidelity, that's FZROX. And at Charles Schwab, it's SWTSX. Now at Fidelity, that expense ratio is 0. At Vanguard, VTSAX is 4 basis points or 0.04%. And at Charles Schwab, SWTSX is 0.03%. Remember, this is an index fund, which is considered a mutual fund, and the capital gains within these different investment funds are distributed to their shareholders. Now, Vanguard patented something very special back in 2020 to basically eliminate the capital gains distributed to shareholders for about 13 funds, and VTSAX was one of those. So they actually are cheaper in that regards. Now, they're index funds in nature. There's not a lot of buying and selling, so therefore capital gains aren't crazy in these types of investment funds anyway. However, FZROX does not have that where VTSAX does. So again, it comes out to be a wash. And on top of that, Charles Schwab, it's pretty much a wash across the board. Just by a small little margin, Fidelity wins here, but again, you can't go wrong. Second is investment products. Now, the investment products within Fidelity, Vanguard, and Charles Schwab are top of the top for a long-term investor. That's not actually day trading or trying to swing trade or doing anything out of the ordinary. If you're here to build wealth, all 3 of these brokers have phenomenal set of funds. Now, I will warn you, not to invest in Vanguard funds in Charles Schwab or Charles Schwab funds in Fidelity. You want to stay at home when you're investing, or there could be an actual charge. So if I went to Fidelity and bought VTSAX, because BudgetDog talks about that all the time, I'm getting charged $75 per transaction. That's pretty silly. But this is why I always say it depends, because there's factors like this that are going to play into your investment decision, to where if you just listen to what I say online and you don't actually understand the concepts or the core understandings behind it, you're going to get screwed. And I don't want that to happen to you. But across the board, Fidelity, Vanguard, and Charles Schwab have phenomenal sets of funds. They all vary in expense just slightly again, but again, it's about a push when it comes to this. And then third is customer service. The customer service is phenomenal across the board. I've worked with Vanguard for a long time. My brother actually does customer service for Fidelity, or he did when he was interning. I saw it actually play out in my house for a little bit. And so they are across the board phenomenal. You can get in contact with anybody. You can always ask a million questions. You can ask them how to do things. They'll actually make the moves for you on the phone, or they'll actually teach you how to do so. So it's almost like an educational experience when you give them a call, and I call Vanguard way too much. So those are the three big ticket items I'm looking for when I'm looking at a broker. Let's break down a few other nuanced things that are going to come up when you select a broker. And I don't want you to start investing and say, man, I wish I would have known this about this broker. So let's break those down. So fractional shares is the next big item I want to talk about. And depending on which type of investment product you have across the board, will really be dependent on how much you're paying. So let's break it down by investment product, by broker. So Fidelity index funds, there is $0 that you have to put forth to start that fund. Fractional shares begin at $1. At Vanguard, however, there's a $3,000 minimum for a lot of the funds. A lot of the popular ones I talk about, VTSAX, VTIX, VEMAX, all of those types of funds typically have a $3,000 starting point. There are even funds that start at $100,000, but I wouldn't be too concerned about that. And at Charles Schwab, you can also begin with $1. So that's for index funds, and I don't want you to come back on me and say, I didn't know Vanguard made me pay a $3,000 starting point for the index funds. Well, once you get past that point, it begins to be fractional. So you're fine. Secondly, is if that does happen, you can go buy an ETF equivalent. VTSAX would be VTI, for example, and you can always Google this. But it's not that hard to start with the ETF and then transition to the index if you would like to do so to start right now. So then let's talk about ETFs. That's another popular investment product amongst these three brokers. At Vanguard, there are fractional ETFs, but you cannot automate this process at this moment when I'm recording this video. They are actively working on making this a component of their investment platform, and that would be fantastic. And once they do, I will switch 100% of index to ETF for slight tax efficiency. But again, does not change my investment strategy, and it's just simply a little more tax efficient. Now at Fidelity, they win slightly again with this in that they actually can begin investing in fractional ETFs at $1, which is phenomenal. And then at Charles Schwab, they allow this, but only for S&P 500 slices. So you can buy only some of these funds at fractional levels. And so my next component I want to bring up is target date funds. Vanguard takes the cake here in just a little bit of margin because their funds overall are the cheapest when it comes to target date funds. Does not necessarily mean they're the best within, because that depends on the individual investing. However, they are typically the cheapest. They have a slight edge on Fidelity and Charles Schwab. And now I'm not into trading, but if you're actually into trading, I probably wouldn't consider any of these brokers. But if I were to pick, I would select Fidelity, as it's the most user-friendly interface when it comes to trading. As far as education, again, I think everything can be found online, so it's not that important which broker provides the most education, but I would say Fidelity does take the cake. And as far as research goes, I would say Charles Schwab wins this game because they give you the most tools and resources to educate on your specific investments. But again, I do think this can be found outside of a platform or a broker like you have. And if you're more old school, the physical locations, Fidelity and Charles Schwab, you might see one in pretty much every city. Vanguard will not have those locations. So if you want to walk into an actual location, you might want to consider Fidelity or Charles Schwab here. And lastly, account types. Remember, we're selecting a broker, and within that broker, we select the account types. So it's very important to understand this piece of the equation too. It's a wash. They all have the same access to different types of accounts. So you should be good at any place you go. And lastly, you don't have to select just one of the three. You actually could technically select an IRA at Vanguard, a brokerage at Fidelity, and your 401k might be with Charles Schwab. And that's fine. It's not a big deal. And you might be asking, which one do I use? I use Vanguard, and I absolutely love Vanguard. But again, I have no bias towards Vanguard over Charles Schwab or Fidelity. I started there with my 401k at Deloitte, so it made a whole lot of sense to continue my investing at Vanguard, and I fell in love with them, and they're great. But again, do not overcomplicate this decision. Jump in with one of these 3 brokers and just begin investing, because that is how you make the money. Waiting is gonna keep you broke. And also if you use Robinhood. Leave any comments that you have below, and I will make sure I get to every single one of those for you guys. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next Monday.